This secret hack saved me from wasting hours of energy grinding and gumming up countless sanding discs, removing the Millscale from the mild steel on my last project. I scoured the internet for a better way and tried out all the options. One stood out as a clear winner in my opinion. I bought different types of flat disc, a special stripping disc, and even some household vinegar. Could vinegar really work as well as people were saying? I found this hard to believe. Will it really magically melt the rust in Millscale and clean up the steel, leaving it ready for sanding and painting without any aggressive grinding? No, I'm not a chemist, but the scientist in me just had to give this a go.
Last time he dug a couple of holes and called it progress. This time he's got out his little chemistry set, says he's invented the Dazz Descaler.
Let's get it done, eh?
If you just can't wait to find out if the vinegar really dissolves rust in Millscale, I've added chapters so you can skip forward to the ones labelled with Dazz Descaler. Otherwise, put your feet up and enjoy the show. First up, I gotta cut up this steel. It's been sitting in the driveway where the supplier dropped it off a couple of weeks now. I really should have cut it up roughly to length sooner and stored it in the garage, rather than letting it get rained on, as it started to rust a little.
You think?
Now that we have some of the pieces cut roughly to length, it's time for the chemistry. For small pieces, you could just use a plastic tub or bucket with a lid for the vinegar, but for these larger pieces, you may need to get more creative. Luckily, a friend lent me a pipe he had created for a similar purpose. Just a piece of pipe with screw-on caps fitted, made from common plumbing fittings, and this fitted my pieces nicely. Here I am cutting a small section off the leftover tube I made the posts out of and cutting it up to make two pieces for caps to go on the top of the posts. It's quite thick steel and keeps jamming my saw, but I eventually get it done. Alright, after about 6 hours of soaking, the first batch of steel is ready to come out of the vinegar bath. I had put the lid on the pipe quite tightly so I could lay the pipe flat. This was a mistake, as the reaction caused pressure to build up in the pipe and made the lid difficult to remove.
Wait to see how this blows up.
Luckily there were no explosions this time, Shazz. Be careful not to spill the vinegar on things, as it is a mild acid. Wear gloves and goggles and keep it covered, as it smells pretty strong and you don't want the vapors getting all over your garage. It's probably not good for your tools. I did find I had to empty the vinegar out into buckets to get the steel out. I just reused some old paint buckets. I also used these buckets to store the vinegar once I was finished with this project, for the next time I need it. The tube didn't fit everything at once, so I needed to do 4 separate batches. I have started with the posts, as my plan is to weld the hinges onto the post and the gate frames first, as these all need to line up nicely so that my gates sit straight and swing smoothly. Time for a break. One of my first projects on this house was a covered deck. We planted it out with grapes for shading. They are also delicious. I'm writing down the dimensions from my computer drawings. You could just draw it up and use a calculator, but I used to work as an architectural drafter, so I like drawing my ideas up on CAD.
And wasting time. And messing around.
The benefit of the planning that I've done is that I can be more efficient, set up once for each task and get it done. First I cut all the steel roughly to length on the driveway and then moved it to my outdoor workbench to cut it all more accurately. This is where the planning and preparation really pays off, as I can cut all the pieces at once, confident that they will be the correct size and shape. Yeah, so you're probably wondering where that post I pulled out of the vinegar bath went. Unfortunately, I stuffed up and didn't record myself cleaning that first post. It did come out great, however. But don't worry, you don't have to trust me. I'll show you the cleaning of the rest of the batches of steel shortly. I better learn to double check I'm actually recording in the future.
You think?
Where I could, I cut the pieces with my drop saw. Some I needed to cut with the cut-off wheel on my grinder. Once the pieces are cut to length, I tidy them up with a flat disc on the grinder. I used a 60 or 80 grit for this. Reasonably aggressive to save time, and because you want to also remove a little metal from all your joints. Everywhere there is going to be a weld, you want to grind off the edge at about a 30-degree angle. This is so that where your two parts come together, there is a small V-shaped recess created where the weld can go. This is an important step, especially if you're going to grind the welds back smooth like I am. If you don't do this, you will end up grinding off most of your weld, as it will mostly be sitting on the surface, and this will lead to weak joints. When you're welding steel, if your steel is clean, you get a better weld. So you want to clean off any paint, rust or millscale from the area you're going to weld. Millscale is the grey stuff that's on your steel when you buy it from the shop. My first welding project was a stair barrier. When I arrived at the powder coater, I hadn't removed the millscale. He suggested I go back home and do that. This turned out to be a massive undertaking using a flap disc on the grinder. This is all even harder when your project is all welded together. So that's why this time I'm working smarter and not harder, and using a bit of very basic chemistry to clean the steel before I even start fabricating, to hopefully save me a lot of elbow grease and give me better welds and a nicer finish.
Introducing the Dazz Descaler, trademark and patent pending.
I can't wait to see how this blows up. I say definitely don't try this at home.
This method is super simple. All you do is soak the steel in a bath of vinegar that you can buy from the supermarket or hardware store for at least 6 hours, or just leave it till the next day. Pull out the steel and the muck just melts off. No joke, this is super easy. At first I used a wire brush to rub off the muck, but eventually I found some 400 or 600 grit wet and dry sandpaper to be the quickest method. After a quick wipe with the sandpaper, I washed them off with water, let them drain, then wiped them dry and stored them in my garage ready for fabrication. I bought 20 litres of vinegar to fill the pipe, and it cost me about 40 New Zealand dollars. I could probably have gotten it cheaper. It's arguably not cheaper than flap discs and requires a bit of preparation. But the time and effort it saved me and the great job it did, I will use this method every time I can in the future, and I recommend you give it a try. Using a flap disc is much more aggressive and will leave your steel full of scuffs that you then need to work out with finer discs. This method leaves your steel already prepped for paint with no scuff marks. I hope you can see from the video how clean the steel comes out. If you've tried this method, leave me a comment on how it worked for you. I've heard there's also a way you can make it into a kind of paste that you rub on so you don't need a container. Let me know if you've tried that, I'd be keen to hear how it worked out also. Now that the science experiment is over, I'm about ready to start welding. A quick wrap up for today. Yeah, I am absolutely filthy.
You're looking pretty chuffed with yourself there, Daz.
Well, yeah, the Dazz Descaler worked a charm and all my gate parts are looking mint.
Well, the steel does look shiny, Daz, I'll give you that. But until we see something that resembles gates, I think we'll wait to claim success.
In the next episode, I'll weld up the frames and posts, I'll weld on the hinges, I'll use my new right angle welding jig, and the gates are really going to start to take shape.
Yeah, tune in to see Daz playing with his hot metal glue gun and his superhero helmet.